Good morning. It is 4 o'clock. Actually, it's 4:30 in the morning, and I wanted to do a quick video about how God started to show me things when I was like 14, 15. I had an absolute, I don't know if that was from God. I don't know, but I think it was supernatural, because since I can remember, I was completely fascinated by the topic of MKUltra. And MKUltra, basically, when the internet started and I began to explore the internet, and back then I had a 56k modem which made ding 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 to log on to the internet for half an hour. and I was completely fascinated, because that was a level of evil that was just unimaginable for me. So MKUltra, basically, for people who don't know what that is, MKUltra is basically a program that was started by the Nazis in the concentration camps on how to control someone's mind. In the eyes of Adolf Hitler, mind control was the way to take over the world. So Mengele did a lot of research on twins in Auschwitz, and why twins? I think that he wanted to know specific things about genetics, because identical twins are genetically identical. So he wanted to know about precognition, because, like, for example, many twins know this, that if the other twin is on the other end of the world in a car accident, the twin back at home has a funny feeling and thinks, I have to call her if everything is alright. She calls her and she hears, yeah, she's just had an accident. This is very common, so this is not this is very common. So the Nazis, especially Mengele, explored these things. What exactly his research was is still a mystery for the public. We know from survivors that he used to inflict horrible like wounds on people and just looked if they would survive. But that doesn't make any sense. Where is the research? What's the value in that? There's no value in hurting people for no reason. and all the so I just wanted to call it so-called survivors, because in my opinion what you see on television is what you're allowed to see, what they want you to see. So all these people that are talking, yeah, I survived Auschwitz, I'm not saying that they didn't. I'm just saying that it could be that some of these interviews were spin doctored, so as to throw the public off what really went on there. So why would a researcher just systematically kill off people by shooting them in the foot and waiting for it to gangrene and the guy to die? And where's the research value in that? There is none. So it's a very, very curious topic. Excuse me. So for long, or let's say every time I tried to talk about MKUltra to someone, they did not believe me. But if I could show it, but I'm not a good video editor, I don't really know how to do that, and I don't have a program to do that, but you can find the apology of Bill Clinton to the American people who were victimized unknowingly in in hospitals and prisons, and many of them even died. So he apologized for that, for this program, MKUltra program, and basically it stopped because one of the patients, so to speak, of one of these wannabe Nazi doctors, Ewan Cameron, was the wife of a senator in Canada, and she blew the whistle, so she exposed him, and I think he was a very highly in high regards in the psychiatric community. He was a leading figure, and he lost his social standing by that, because he was involved in a certain kind of MKUltra sub-project, which was called de-patterning, and his theory was that if you can de-pattern the mind, you can then basically reboot the mind in your own image, which is hilariously stupid. So the patterning that he did, Ewan Cameron, was basically he laid patients without their consent or with some phony reason into a coma for 3 months or so, and let them listen to pre-recorded messages over and over and over while they were in a coma. So I hope, if there's a hell, I hope this guy's there. I mean, this is unbelievable what this guy did. And he was one of the most famous, most revered psychiatrists in the world, Ewan Cameron, from Canada, I think he was from Toronto. He was a very famous psychiatrist back then in the 60s. I'm a little, I have a little cold, I guess. So anyway, I was extremely fascinated by MKUltra, and my whole life it did not leave me alone. And I always wanted to have the book that Fritz Springmeier wrote, which is called, it has a long title, it's called How to Create a Totally Undetectable Mind-Controlled Slave. Something like that. And I found the book online shortly, a very short time ago. I didn't get to read it yet, but I read the chapters and the names of the chapters, and it's like it's like hypnosis, use of drugs, use of hypnotic language, use of all these things in combination to make a completely mind-controlled slave. And I read a few things, a few chapters, but not the whole book, and it's what would be called in German perfide. It's extremely sinister and malevolent, and so basically they start when you're very young. They are selected often by their genetic makeup, because not every person can dissociate, and you have to be able to dissociate. Dissociation basically means that when you are traumatized, that you can go out of your body to not experience the horrible trauma. That's what dissociation is. I think that happened to me several times. It's basically like I said, I was phasing in and out of my body, so I could see myself from above. On the day that Jesus revealed himself, when I was in so much pain that basically I dissociated. Oh my God. Ah, my back hurts. So MKUltra had like 200 and more than 260 sub-projects, and one of the sub-projects, for example, is MK Delta. And if you know about Delta Force, this is the elite fighting unit in American Special Forces, and they are not called Delta Force for fun. They are they have been raised in Delta programming. So basically every kind of programming, I'm coughing up the demons, obviously. Every type of programming has a Greek letter. There's alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, phi, and so on. So delta programming basically is assassin programming. These children use usually grow up on military bases, and there were some of them. Excuse me for a moment. Oh, my back hurts. Oh my goodness. So there was one of them who talked about his childhood in this program, and there were several of these people. One of them being Duncan from Project Camelot. If you want to know how to write his name, Duncan O apostrophe Finioen. Duncan O. Finioen. He has like Celtic blood. He has long red hair, and they especially they see Celtic genetics for their genetic abilities. So he was not victimized in a way like the other two guys that I know about, but he was in a program and he can't remember most of his youth. So like there's a hole in his memory that's like 14 years or so. I mean, it's insane. So he knows he grew up where he grew up. He knows that he was sent into this program, but he does not know what he did there. He just has flashes of memories. So basically, it's absolutely possible to block memories, to make amnesiac barriers in the mind. And the original research came from Joseph Mengele, and it was perfected after World War II by these Nazi scientists that they took over in Project Paperclip, like Werner von Braun, who they said he was not a war criminal, but that's not true. I live in Austria, so I know a lot about these Nazi stories. So to say that he was not a war criminal is an absolute insanity. And officially they said, yeah, we never took anyone where we knew that they killed people and so on. But that's not true. They took whom they could find before the Russians did. So they took as many people as possible under the guise of Project Paperclip. So when they worked on MKUltra Mind Control, the best in-depth book that I could ever find was, and I really wanted to have it for a long time, but I never could find it anywhere, and that's Fritz Springmeier's book, How to Create a totally mind-controlled and undetectable slave, or a totally undetectable mind-controlled slave, or something to that extent, or the Illuminati formula to create an undetectable, totally mind-controlled slave. So now I have it. That's the whole title. And I have the book on the computer, but if I would open it to read from it, the camera stops, so I can't. I can only tell you from memory about the book, and I haven't yet read all of it. I just basically went over very fast about a few things. It's about in detail how they do that, and basically this form, basically this form of mind control is massively used now in the entertainment industry. And that's also why so many of these celebrities go completely nuts. Like the incident where Britney Spears shaved her head and said she was the Antichrist. Maybe she was even right. So basically, it's about hypnosis. It's about how to basically what they are doing is they select a child from birth. They traumatize the child already in the womb via electroshock to the womb. Then they traumatize the child by premature birth. Then they love bomb the child. And they fixate the child to one person, which becomes the handler of that child later in life. And many people's handler was Joseph Mengele himself. So there's one of these victims who said that she can remember that he used to sing lullabies in German to her and rocking her and so on. So there's this period when they are children where they are being love bombed. Okay, so they are fixated completely on the handler, and when they are basically when they are old enough, the love bombing stops and they get the opposite of that. So that basically the handler becomes like God and Satan at the same time. So the handler, and this is also basically nowadays it's understood in psychology that there are two kinds of personalities which are post-traumatic personality disorders, which is a narcissistic personality disorder or a codependent. They also call them people pleasers, and in the opinion of my psychologist, I have PTSD, and so I was diagnosed with PTSD basically, and I think that I am a codependent person because I am a person who can never say no. I'm a people pleaser because basically of how I grew up and what happened to me. So, and there are two ways you can go when you experience trauma again and again and again. There is one way where you yourself become a narcissist or a narcissistic psychopath, which is called NPD, and there's also a theory that NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, is a form of MPD, which is multiple personality disorder, which is now called dissociative identity disorder. But let's stick to the old terminology. So MPD, multiple personality disorder, is the goal of MKUltra basically is to create what they are doing is they inflict so much trauma that the human psyche breaks, like imagine it to be a mirror, and you drop it on the floor and the mirror splinters in 10,000 pieces, or like 200 pieces. Each of those pieces then becomes its own mirror, its own personality. So thereby you can have like 200 personalities. And Roseanne Barr talks pretty openly about it, that she has, first off, she's a victim of MKUltra. She speaks out against MKUltra. There is even a, she was even interviewed on this topic by, I don't know, some network in America, which is flabbergasting that they talked about it openly. So, and she said, you have to understand, MKUltra mind control rules in Hollywood. She says that in this interview. I can give you the link down in the description. So this was real, this is real, and just because Clinton apologized doesn't mean that it disappeared from the face of the earth. It did not. So the knowledge of these things is becoming more and more widespread. And basically it's possible to make a person into whatever you want him to be, if you really understand this science of mind control. And I think that I was so fascinated by the topic all my life. I tried to find more and more and more information, which was very difficult back 20 years ago. But yeah, so maybe this was also a gift from God to me, because if I had not known about this stuff, I don't think I would have figured out what's wrong with me. Why is my life so bad? Why you know, why do I step into every trap? Why do I have so many problems, you know? Because according to my parents, I should have been, because I was a very good student. I mean, I could have been a lawyer or whatever, but I had this need to escape from reality, and I could not stop doing that because it was too much for me. And I think that I'm also a very, very sensitive person on a level, and there were a lot of very traumatic things that happened to me. Of course, if you ask certain other people, they would say, oh no, you had the most wonderful childhood ever. But that's not true. That's not true. I drowned twice. I still have the photographic memories from these events where I nearly died, where two times I nearly drowned. One time I nearly suffocated because my throat just closed because of whatever. I was in hospital for a long time, and I shouldn't even be able to remember that, because at one of these events I was like 1 year old, and or 1.5 years old, and when I drowned I was like 3 or 4. So basically, that's also a sign that you're a dissociative person, um, when you can remember photographically. And that's also something that they do in MKUltra. They found out that if they surgically scar the brain stem, the scar tissue, which builds over the brain stem, gives you a photographic memory. So basically, these people become walking, talking, recording devices. They can spout off, they're sitting somewhere and they listen to two people talk. These two people don't even really recognize her because she's just some girl or whatever, 6 years old, and she can photographically remember everything that happened and every word that was spoken, because she is in her alternate personality where she can do these things. So MPD is the goal, because if you have these multiple personalities, you can program each of them. So for example, one of the personality gets alpha programming, one gets beta programming, one gets gamma, delta, and so on. So all these different kinds of programmings go into different alters. And if you have ever listened to Britney Spears, she sometimes switches from one personality to another without noticing it, which is typical for a person suffering from multiple personality disorder, which was once called demonic possession. What did Jesus do when the demoniac, who was so fierce that he used to tear the irons that they had cuffed him to the wall with, he used it to tear them apart because of the supernatural strength that the spirits can give you. And he ran to Jesus and he screamed at him and he said, what do you want from me, Son of God? The time is not yet come. And Jesus said, be quiet. And immediately he stopped speaking. He couldn't open his mouth. And Jesus and then he fell to his knees. He told Jesus that, please don't send me into the pit. Please let me go into the herd of swine. And Jesus said, so be it, go. And the herd of swine basically then, when they were possessed by this evil spirit, ran over the cliffs into the ocean and died. That's one of the stories where Jesus encounters a demonically possessed person. I don't think it's the story where he says, my name is Legion, for we are many. It's another story. Anyway, so what they are doing is basically they have made a science out of witchcraft, and also according to Springmeier, many of the ideas that they implemented into MKUltra came from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And So, and a very interesting thing is that they were also looking for students who were involved in silver mind control. And I used to practice silver mind control for some time before it was obvious to me that this was demonic. Of course, they call it extrasensory perception. They call it whatever, psycho-cybernetics, or opening the subconscious, or remote viewing. They have all these scientific sounding names, but it is demonic. It's not like we have evolved into a higher state of consciousness. It's all a demonic thing, and I was surprised by the extreme detail that Springmeier goes into, because he basically explained exactly what they did, and they did that even back in the 19th century. This love bombing, for example, one of the victims explained that she comes from a lineage of where her great-grandfather was a very, very well-known war hero, and he was involved in mind control experiment, and he did that. Basically, he basically he had a stopwatch, and he had his daughter or granddaughter, and he locked himself into a cabin for 18 months or so with this child, so that the child would have in her because basically a child is in a permanent hypnotic state, or it's also called a hypnagogic state. The child is in this state until the age of 6. That's why Crowley wrote the victim must be younger than 6 years old, and in the Bible they say they used to sacrifice virgins. That's a code word for children. So the sacrifice has to be without blemish, basically. Sin-free, high intelligence, male, preferably. So that's the highest blood sacrifice, you know. The only thing that is higher than that is a selfless, in my opinion, a selfless blood sacrifice. And the only selfless blood sacrifice that one can make is to give himself willingly to die for others, with some intention behind it, like to take away the sins of the world. That would be a even higher blood sacrifice than, say, a male child of perfect innocence, like Crowley wrote. So children are in a complete hypnotic state for the first 6 years of their life. That's why you should never tell your child when they are young things like, you will never make it, you will never amount to anything, you are lazy, you lack character. Because if a father tells that to his son, especially if he's younger than 6 years old, this is not only is it a curse of your father against you, it is it gets stuck at a time when your neuroplasticity is very high. So when you're that young, basically everything is being soaked up like a sponge from your mind, and it is in there forever. And so it's pretty disturbing to think about that people use this knowledge to create assassins, spies, you know. And one of the guys who was in James Casbolt, he grew up in a military base, and he was part of this Delta Force program or something. And they were raised with the Nazi beliefs, you know, that we are a superior race, all the other races are beneath us, and so on. So, and he still has that. He still has that inside of him, because what you learn until you're 6 years old basically determines who you will be in life. And even behavioral psychologists know that. And it's something that everybody should know. And so I'm going to give you the audio of Roseanne Barr. Wait a second, please.
This is a culture of fear, and nobody's more afraid than people in Hollywood. They're afraid that they'll drop out of the top, you know. They're afraid that they'll drop from the bottom of the pyramid, maybe to the middle of the pyramid. But you know, they're the ones. Hollywood is the one that keeps all this power structure and all this culture of racism and sexism and classism and genderism and all of it in place. They continually feed it, and they make a lot of money doing it. And they do it at the behest of their masters who run everything. So, you know, they're not going to get brave enough to do that. I mean, I think that there aren't many of us who are brave enough to do that. And I'm just, you know, I'm lucky that I can do it, and I feel that I do it on behalf of many people in Hollywood too. I go to Hollywood parties, or you know, occasionally I go to Oscar parties and things like that. And people, big stars, people will grab me by the arm and take me aside and say, I just want to thank you for the things you say. And it blows my mind, but that's the culture. It's a culture of fear for sure. You know, and it's a big culture of mind control too. MKUltra mind control rules in Hollywood. If you don't know, Google that and look into it.
Well, we've talked about Operation Mocking.
Oh, there it was. So they are talking about this on the news now. And there was also a story from the story of Cathy O'Brien, and it's disgusting. What they are doing is absolutely disgusting. Cathy O'Brien was a mind control victim, and one of the CIA guys smuggled her out because he realized that they don't use what they normally could use, which is technology, which does not hurt. So, but she said she was a personal plaything for people like White House level people like George H.W. So she did not have the treatment of using technology for mind control, which they have a long time. She had the old school trauma-based mind control practiced on her. I don't have to explain what that means. Obviously, trauma-based mind control, and so this guy had compassion. She did not know how old she was. She thought she was 16. He showed her driver's license and says, "Cathy, you are like 29. You've been here for 13 years or so." She did not believe him. That's how out of their mind these people are. They are slave robots, like addicts are slaves and robots. He showed her driver's license, and she said, "That's not my driver's license." She thought she was like 19 or so, and he showed her license and she was over 30 or something. So, like I said, I am a very skeptical person. The first thing that the first witness that I heard talking about real experiences was Cathy O'Brien, and she held several lectures at the Granada Forum, and she made basically a sort of mini documentary about her life. She just tells her story, but now comes why I believe that, why there's no doubt in my mind that she tells the truth, that she was a White House level mind controlled slave for the elite, okay? And even Hillary Clinton was involved. So she said that they used a knife to carve out a part of her vagina, the muscle, so that it protrudes and it looks like a little face. And even when she made the documentary, she was not shy to take those filmmakers with her to a gynecologist, and the gynecologist says, "Wow, what happened there?" And she said they used an X-Acto knife to carve out part of her the muscle in her vagina to further traumatize her, and for fun, basically, because these people are insane. And if you're interested in MKUltra, I would recommend you to watch Cathy O'Brien and her now husband, the guy who freed her. His name is Mark Phillips. He was flying with Central Intelligence Airlines for a long time. So this guy knows what he's speaking about. So he talks the talk, and he obviously walked the walk, and he himself is also a very broken man, because he saw things that he said that when mind control started, he was convinced that they would use it for something good, because they saw that they could rehabilitate prison inmates, you know. So basically they cracked the holy grail of psychology, and that is how to basically, when you're a lifetime criminal, you are that because of the rigidity of your soul or mind, or basically, so you have to have this neuroplasticity to reprogram someone to make him into someone else. It has to be a traumatic event or a spiritual metamorphosis that happens, which can happen through Jesus or through other spiritual ways. But basically, when you're 28, it's over. So after you're 28, there's no more neuroplasticity. You are the person that you are. That's it. So to get someone again into a state of neuroplasticity where he basically becomes a child again, in a hypnagogic state, to reprogram him, to introduce new attitudes and so on. This is very much hinted at by Stanley Kubrick in the movie A Clockwork Orange. And as many of you know, the color orange is associated with Freemasonry. So what is A Clockwork Orange? It's about mind control. The whole movie is about mind control. Watch the movie if you haven't watched it. It's all about mind control. So Alex DeLarge, that's the protagonist. He is a violent offender. He goes to prison for what he did, and in prison they have a new program. I think they call it the Ludovico method or something, where basically he's strapped into a chair, his eyes are forced open, he is in front, he's basically like in a cinema, he sees violence which used to arouse him, and then they give him drugs, and at the same time it's hinted at that they attach electrodes to his sexual organs to probably to arouse or disturb the Kundalini force inside of him. So that's maybe one way to bring someone into neuroplasticity. So, and then in the movie, he used to be a very big fan of what was it, Ludwig van Beethoven, and during these programming sessions they use music from Beethoven, the Ninth Symphony, and he screams, no, 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 please don't program Ludwig van. What has he ever done to you? Don't do that. And every time he hears Beethoven from then on, he gets sick, he wants to puke, he gets physically ill. Every time there comes an impulse of violence, he gets physically ill. The whole movie is a movie about mind control. Even the title, A Clockwork Orange, is a Freemasonic clockwork, someone who has been programmed like a clockwork. So that's what that movie title means. Most people don't have no idea what he's talking about. A clockwork orange, what does that even mean? It means mind control. And the color orange is associated with Freemasonry, which I don't think that many people know that, but it is. Just like the color purple used to be a privilege of the royal family. It was not allowed for commoners to wear the color purple, because purple is the combination of blue and red, and blue and red are the two Luciferian colors. At least that's my opinion. So I think I ranted a little bit, but basically what Roseanne said, mind control is huge in Hollywood. That interview was from years, way back, and Roseanne even was with Cathy O'Brien on during a lecture. She introduced her as her friend. So obviously Roseanne Barr herself suffers from multiple personality disorder, and it's really sad that this exists. This technology does exist, and much more. That's just the tip of the iceberg. That's like news from last week or so. So they now have technology to basically everything you can do with chemicals, you can do with electromagnetic stimulation. That's also what the book that I showed you in the other video, Mind War, is about, by Michael Aquino. Electronic warfare, directed energy weapons, and so on. He's the high priest of the Temple of Set, Michael Aquino. So I'm gonna end it here. Thank you for listening, and have a good day.